You know what's funny about being worth $10 billion? dollars? Nobody believes you when you're eating ramen noodles for dinner and driving a 15-year-old Honda Civic with a dent in the passenger door. My name is David Chen. Wait, scratch that. David Miller. I've been living under so many financial aliases for so long, sometimes I forget which name goes with which life. The truth is, I own 51% of Blackstone Industries, one of the largest manufacturing conglomerates in the Midwest. My wife Sabrina thinks I'm a struggling IT consultant who barely makes $40,000 a year. She's about to find out just how wrong she is. David, honey, can you please wear the Navy suit tonight? Sabrina called from our bedroom. Well, technically my bedroom in the modest two-bedroom apartment I rent specifically to maintain this charade. We're having dinner with my parents. I looked up from my laptop, where I'd been reviewing quarterly reports showing Blackstone's profits had jumped another 12%. That little spike just earned me roughly $200 million. Not bad for a Tuesday afternoon. Sure thing, babe, I replied, closing the laptop. Any particular reason for the family dinner? Sabrina emerged from the bedroom, stunning as always, in a way that made my chest tighten. Blonde hair perfectly styled, wearing a dress that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Though she thought I didn't know that. Her father had been supplementing her allowance for years, not knowing that every dollar ultimately came from companies I controlled. They just want to get to know you better, she said, not quite meeting my eyes. You know how important family is to them. Right. Richard and Vivian Blackstone. Yes, I married into the family whose company I secretly owned. We're about as warm as a January morning in Detroit. In the 2 years Sabrina and I had been married, they'd spoken to me exactly 7 times, and each conversation felt like a job interview I was failing. But tonight felt different. There was something in Sabrina's voice, a nervous energy that made my instincts prickle. After building a business empire from nothing, you develop a sixth sense for when people are plotting against you. Sounds great, I said, standing up and stretching. Should I bring anything? Wine? Flowers for your mother? No, no. They have everything covered. She fidgeted with her wedding ring, the modest 1-carat diamond I'd bought her, not knowing she'd been hoping for something from Tiffany's. Just, just be yourself, okay? Be myself. If only she knew what that actually meant. I headed to our closet and pulled out the navy suit, a decent one from Men's Warehouse, nothing fancy. It hung next to Sabrina's collection of designer dresses, a visual reminder of the financial gap she thought existed between us. In the back, hidden behind winter coats, hung a custom-tailored Armani suit I'd never worn around her. Maybe tonight would be the night to break it out. But no, tonight was about seeing exactly who my wife and her family really were when they thought they held all the cards. An hour later, we pulled up to the Blackstone mansion in my dented Civic. The house sprawled across 3 acres of manicured lawn, all glass and steel and architectural angles designed to intimidate. Funny thing, I'd been inside the blueprints for this place. As the majority shareholder, I'd technically approved the construction budget 12 years ago. You okay? Sabrina asked as we sat in the circular driveway, my car looking like a rust bucket next to her father's collection of luxury vehicles. Just taking it all in, I said honestly. Your family really knows how to live. She squeezed my hand, and for a moment I saw a flash of the woman I'd fallen in love with. Before I knew about the money, before I understood the pressure she felt to marry within her social class, there had been genuine moments between us. Real laughter, real intimacy, real connection. Those moments were exactly why tonight hurt so much. Richard Blackstone answered the door himself. A power move, since I knew they employed a full-time housekeeper. He was tall, silver-haired, with the kind of commanding presence that came from decades of ordering people around. His handshake was firm, his smile perfectly calibrated to seem warm, while remaining completely cold. David, good to see you again, son. Son, right. Thank you for having me, Mr. Blackstone. Your home is incredible. Please, call me Richard. We're family now, after all. His eyes flicked over my suit, and I caught the micro-expression of disdain before he covered it. Come in, come in. Vivian's been looking forward to this all week. The interior of the house was exactly what you'd expect. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, artwork that cost more than most people's houses. Vivian Blackstone glided down the main staircase like she was making an entrance at the Met Gala. She was elegant in that brittle way of women who'd spent their entire lives being beautiful and were now fighting a losing battle against time. David, darling. She air kissed me, her perfume expensive and overwhelming. You look nice. Nice. The way you'd compliment a child's crayon drawing. Thank you, Mrs. Blackstone. You look stunning, as always. Oh, please call me Vivian. And thank you, this old thing? She gestured to what I recognized as a dress that probably cost $15,000. I just threw it on. We made our way to the dining room where a table set for four awaited us. The china was Wedgwood, the crystal was baccarat, and the silverware was actual silver. Everything designed to remind me that I didn't belong. So, David, Richard said as we settled into our seats, Sabrina tells us you're in computers? IT consulting, yes, sir. Mostly small business networks, some cybersecurity work. All technically true. I did own several IT companies, though I hadn't personally touched a computer in years, except to check my stock portfolio. And how's that working out for you? Financially, I mean? Sabrina shot her father a warning look. Dad. What? It's a reasonable question. I'm just trying to understand how our daughter's husband supports himself. I took a sip of wine, a bottle that cost more than my monthly rent on the apartment. It's honest work. We're not rich, but we get by. Yes, I imagine you do. Vivian's tone could have frozen champagne. Though I have to say, David, we were a bit surprised when Sabrina chose to marry so practically. Mother, Sabrina said, her voice tight. I'm just saying, darling. We always thought you'd end up with someone more established, like Graham Morrison. You remember Graham, don't you? He just made partner at his PR firm. Lovely boy from a wonderful family. Ah, Graham Morrison. I knew Graham quite well, though he didn't know it. His PR firm had been courting Blackstone Industries for months, trying to land our account. I'd been personally reviewing his proposals and finding them impressively mediocre. I'm sure Graham is great, I said evenly, but Sabrina chose me. Yes, Richard said, cutting into his steak with surgical precision. She did. The question is why? The conversation continued like that for the next hour. Polite on the surface, vicious underneath. They asked about my family, working class, from Ohio, my education, state school, student loans, my prospects, apparently non-existent. Every question was designed to highlight exactly how unsuitable I was for their daughter. And through it all, Sabrina said almost nothing. She didn't defend me, didn't push back against their obvious contempt. She just sat there, picking at her food, looking increasingly uncomfortable. Finally, as the dessert plates were being cleared, Richard stood up. David, I wonder if we could have a word. Man to man? Of course. He walked over to a sideboard and retrieved a manila envelope thick with papers. My heart rate picked up, not from nervousness, but from anticipation. This was it. The moment I'd been waiting for. He slid the envelope across the table to me. Open it. Inside was a cashier's check for $2 million and a legal document I recognized immediately, a separation agreement. My name was already filled in, with blank spaces for my signature. This is more money than you'll see in your lifetime, Richard said, his voice matter-of-fact. Take it, sign the papers, and leave our daughter. You're embarrassing her. Vivian leaned forward. She deserves someone from her own class, David. Someone who can give her the life she was raised to expect. I looked at Sabrina. Her face was pale, her eyes fixed on the tablecloth. She'd known this was coming. And what do you think, Sabrina? I asked quietly. Do you want me to take this money and disappear? She finally looked up, and I saw tears in her eyes. David, maybe they have a point. Maybe we rushed into things. Maybe we're just too different. There it was. The betrayal I'd been expecting but hoping wouldn't come. I picked up the check, studying it. $2 million, a fortune to most people. To me, it was about what I made while sleeping. This is generous, I said finally. Really generous. But I have a question. What's that? Richard asked. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number. Just need to make a quick call first. The phone rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Blackstone Industries' CEO office. Margaret, it's me. Can you patch me through to the boardroom? I need to speak with Richard. Of course, sir. One moment. Richard frowned. What are you? His phone rang. All the color drained from his face as he stared at the caller ID. He looked at me, then at his phone, then back at me. Answer it, I said. With shaking hands, he picked up. Richard Blackstone speaking. I could hear Margaret's voice through the phone speaker. Mr. Blackstone, I have the majority shareholder on the line. He'd like to speak with you immediately. Richard's eyes went wide. He looked at me again, and I saw the exact moment understanding dawned. Hello, Richard, I said into my phone, watching his face. This is David Miller, your majority shareholder. I believe we need to talk. The silence in the dining room was deafening. Richard's face had gone from confident to confused to absolutely horrified in the span of about 10 seconds. Vivian looked like she'd seen a ghost, and Sabrina was staring at me like I'd just grown a second head. That's impossible, Richard whispered into his phone. Is it? I asked, still speaking into mine, while maintaining eye contact with him. Margaret, can you please read Mr. Blackstone the shareholding report for the anonymous trust that controls 51% of his company? Through the speaker, we all heard Margaret's crisp voice. Certainly, sir. The controlling interest in Blackstone Industries is held by the Miller Family Trust, established in 2018, with David Miller as the primary beneficiary and decision maker. I hung up my phone. Richard slowly lowered his. You, he said, his voice barely audible. Me, I confirmed. Funny story, actually. Remember that mysterious investor who bought out your debt during the 2020 crisis? The one who saved your company from bankruptcy, but insisted on remaining anonymous? Surprise. Vivian's champagne glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the marble floor. This isn't possible. You're nobody. You drive a Honda. I drive a Honda because I like Hondas. They're reliable. I picked up the check, examining it again. You know what's really interesting about this $2 million? I made about that much in the time it took us to eat dinner tonight. Blackstone's stock jumped 0.5% after hours. Something about a new government contract we just landed. Sabrina finally found her voice. David, how is this possible? We live in a 2-bedroom apartment. You clip coupons. I clip coupons because waste is waste, regardless of how much money you have. And we live in a 2-bedroom apartment because I wanted to see who you really were when you thought I had nothing to offer except myself. I stood up, straightening my Men's Warehouse suit. Turns out that wasn't enough. Now wait just a minute, Richard said, his CEO voice returning, as he tried to regain control of the situation. If this is true, and I'm not saying I believe it, then we can discuss this like civilized people. Perhaps we were hasty in our judgment. Oh, you were definitely hasty. I walked over to the window, looking out at the grounds I technically owned. Do you want to know the really funny part? I've been watching your company for years, Richard. Studying it, learning about the family that ran it. When I met Sabrina at that coffee shop downtown, I had no idea who she was. It was pure coincidence. You're lying, Sabrina said, but her voice lacked conviction. Am I? Think about it, babe. Where did we meet? At Grind Coffee. On 5th Street. Right. The little place with the terrible Wi-Fi and the amazing blueberry muffins. I was there because I just finished a meeting with my lawyers 3 blocks away. You were there because your car had broken down and you were waiting for a tow truck, remember? She nodded slowly. You ordered a lavender latte and complained to the barista that it was too sweet. I offered you my plain coffee instead. We talked for 2 hours about books, movies, travel, everything except money or family or work. It was the best conversation I'd had in years. But you said you were an IT consultant. I said I worked in technology, which is true. I own 17 tech companies. When you assumed I was a consultant, I didn't correct you because I was enjoying being treated like a normal person instead of a walking dollar sign. Vivian had recovered enough to stand up, her face flushed with anger and embarrassment. This is absurd. If you're really who you claim to be, prove it. I pulled out my phone again and opened my banking app. The balance showed $847,392,183.42. I turned the screen toward her. She looked at the number, blinked, and sat back down heavily. Jesus Christ, Richard muttered. No, just David Miller. Though I understand the confusion, I do tend to work in mysterious ways. I pocketed the phone and turned back to Sabrina. So, here's my question, sweetheart. Now that you know I can give you everything you ever wanted, how do you feel about me? Tears were streaming down her face. David, I don't understand. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted you to love me for who I am, not what I have. Clearly, that was asking too much. That's not fair, she said, standing up. You lied to me. Our entire marriage is built on a lie. Is it? What exactly did I lie about? I told you I loved you. True. I told you I'd take care of you. Also true. Though perhaps not in the way you expected. I told you I wanted to build a life together. Still true, if you're interested. Richard cleared his throat. David, I think we may have gotten off on the wrong foot here. Perhaps we could start over? I laughed, actually laughed. Start over? Richard, you just tried to bribe me with my own money. You told me I was embarrassing your daughter. Your wife suggested she should have married someone else. And your daughter, my wife, sat there and agreed with all of it. We didn't know, Vivian said weakly. Exactly. You didn't know. And that tells me everything I need to know about your character. About all of your characters. I walked back to the table and picked up the separation agreement, scanning through the legal language. This is actually pretty well written. Your lawyers did good work. There's just one small problem. What's that? Richard asked. I own the law firm that drafted it. The color drained from his face again. Morrison, Klein, and Associates, right? Nice firm. I bought them out last year when they were struggling with debt. They've been much more profitable since then. I tossed the papers back on the table. I'll have to have a conversation with them about conflict of interest policies. David, Sabrina said, reaching for my arm, please, can we talk about this? Privately? I looked down at her hand on my sleeve, remembering all the times she'd touched me with genuine affection. Before tonight, I would have done anything for this woman. I'd bought companies just because she mentioned liking their products. I'd donated millions to charities she supported. I'd even been planning to surprise her with a house. A real house, not an apartment, for our 3rd anniversary. What would you like to talk about, Sabrina? About us, about our marriage, about how we move forward from here. Move forward? I gently removed her hand from my arm. Sabrina, an hour ago you were ready to let me walk away for $2 million. You sat there while your parents insulted me, belittled me, and tried to buy me off. You didn't say a single word in my defense. I was in shock. I didn't know what to say. You didn't know what to say when your mother suggested you should have married Graham Morrison instead of me. She flinched. That's different. How is it different? Because Graham he's what, Sabrina? Rich, from a good family, more suitable. She couldn't answer. I pulled out my phone again and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for. You know what? Let's call Graham right now. See what he thinks about all this. David, don't! But I was already dialing. The phone rang 3 times before a familiar voice answered. Graham Morrison speaking. Graham, hi, this is David Miller. Sabrina's husband? A pause. Oh, hi, David. Is everything okay? Everything's great. I'm actually here having dinner with Sabrina's parents, and your name came up. Vivian was just saying how she always thought Sabrina would end up with you instead of me. Another pause, longer this time. That's awkward, man. I don't really know what to say to that. Oh, I do. I was wondering if you'd like to submit a new proposal for the Blackstone Industries account. The previous ones were pretty weak, but I'm feeling generous tonight. What? How would you know about our proposals to Blackstone? Because I'm the majority shareholder, Graham. I'm the anonymous investor you've been trying to impress for months. Dead silence. Still there, buddy? You're the Miller Trust? Guilty as charged. So, about that proposal, think you can do better than the garbage you've been sending me? Yes, sir. Absolutely, sir. I had no idea. Of course you didn't. Nobody ever does. I looked around the table at the 3 faces staring at me in horror. I'll have my people call your people, Graham. Have a good evening. I hung up and slipped the phone back into my pocket. Well, I said cheerfully, that was fun. Anyone want coffee? The next few days were, to put it mildly, interesting. Word had somehow leaked that the mysterious Miller Trust was controlled by Sabrina Blackstone's nobody husband, and the social circles of our fair city were buzzing with gossip. I spent Tuesday morning in my real office, a corner suite on the 42nd floor of downtown's tallest building, watching Richard Blackstone squirm through an emergency board meeting via video conference. It was fascinating to see him try to explain to the other directors why he'd attempted to bribe the company's majority shareholder. The situation was a misunderstanding, he kept saying, a family matter that got out of hand. Margaret, my assistant, knocked on the door and entered with her usual efficiency. She was 63, had worked for me for 8 years, and was probably the only person in the world who knew all my secrets. The board meeting is wrapping up, she said, settling into the chair across from my desk. Mr. Blackstone is requesting a private meeting with you. I'll bet he is. What's my schedule look like? You're free until 3 when you have the acquisition meeting for the Portland Shipping Company? Perfect. Tell Richard I'll see him at 1. And Margaret, have building security escort him up. I don't want him wandering around trying to figure out what other companies I own. She nodded and left. I turned back to the window, looking out over the city I'd helped reshape over the past decade. Funny how different everything looked when you weren't pretending to be poor. My phone buzzed with a text from Sabrina. We need to talk. Can you come home? Home. Our little apartment that I'd been renting month to month for 2 years, furnished with IKEA furniture and secondhand appliances. I'd actually grown fond of the place. There was something liberating about living simply, even when you didn't have to. I texted back, busy with work tonight? Her response came immediately. Work? What work? Your consulting clients? Right. She still didn't really understand what my life actually looked like. How could she? I'd been so careful to maintain the illusion. Something like that, I replied. At exactly 1 o'clock, building security called to announce Richard Blackstone's arrival. I told them to send him up, then spent a few minutes arranging papers on my desk. Financial reports, acquisition documents, merger proposals, all with the Blackstone Industries letterhead prominently displayed. When Richard walked into my office, his face was a study in barely controlled panic. He'd clearly spent the morning trying to figure out how to handle this situation, and just as clearly hadn't come up with a good answer. David, he said, attempting his usual commanding tone and failing completely. Thank you for seeing me. Richard, please sit down. I gestured to the chair across from my desk, the same chair where I'd made decisions that affected thousands of employees, including him. How was the board meeting? Challenging. He sat down stiffly, his eyes taking in the office, the view, the obvious trappings of serious wealth. The other directors have questions. I imagine they do. It's not every day they discover their CEO tried to bribe their biggest investor. It wasn't a bribe. It was... He stopped, realizing there was no good way to finish that sentence. It was what exactly? A generous gift? A family loan? Richard's composure finally cracked. Damn it, David. What do you want from me? An apology? Fine, I apologize we misjudged you. We made a mistake. You did make a mistake. Several, actually. I leaned back in my chair, studying him. Want to know what your biggest mistake was? Enlighten me. You assume that someone's worth as a human being is directly proportional to their bank balance. You treated me like garbage because you thought I was poor. Now you're kissing my ass because you know I'm rich. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. I'm a businessman, David. I deal in realities. No, Richard, you deal in appearances. There's a difference. I stood up and walked over to the window. Do you know why I saved your company in 2020? Because it was a good investment? Because Sabrina mentioned once that she was worried about her father's business. She said you'd been stressed, that you might lose everything. I looked into it, saw that you were indeed about to go under, and decided to help. Not for profit, for her. I turned back to face him. I could have bought you out completely. I could have fired you and installed my own CEO. Instead, I kept you in charge and stayed anonymous because I thought it would make Sabrina happy to see her father succeed. Richard's face had gone pale again. I didn't know. Of course you didn't. Because you never bothered to look beyond the surface. You saw a guy in a cheap suit and assumed he was worthless. So, what happens now? He asked quietly. Now? Now you go back to running my company and you do a better job of it. The board is already talking about replacing you, Richard. Your little stunt at dinner didn't exactly inspire confidence. And if I refuse, I smiled, you won't refuse. Because if you do, I'll fire you, liquidate the company's assets, and sell them off piece by piece. 12,000 people will lose their jobs, including everyone you care about. Your wife's charity work depends on donations from Blackstone Industries. Your country club membership is paid for by your corporate expense account. Your entire lifestyle exists because I allow it to exist. The fight went out of him completely. What do you want me to do? I want you to be better. Treat your employees fairly. Stop cutting corners on safety. Give people opportunities based on merit, not connections. Run the company like you actually care about something other than profit margins. And in return, you get to keep your job and your dignity. For now, he nodded slowly. And Sabrina? What about my daughter? What about her? Are you going to divorce her? Destroy her life to get back at us? I considered the question. I don't know yet. That depends on her. She loves you, David. She's confused and scared. But she loves you. Does she? Or does she love the idea of being married to a billionaire? Richard couldn't answer that because we both knew the truth. After he left, I sat alone in my office for a long time, thinking about the conversation and what came next. My phone kept buzzing with calls and texts. Reporters who'd somehow gotten my number, old friends who'd seen the news, business associates who suddenly wanted to discuss opportunities. But the only message that mattered was from Sabrina. Please come home. We need to talk. I looked around my real office one more time, then gathered my things and headed for the elevator. Time to go back to my fake life and figure out whether anything about it was worth saving. The apartment felt different when I walked in that evening. Smaller somehow, now that the illusion was broken. Sabrina was sitting on our second-hand couch, still wearing the same clothes from the night before, her eyes red from crying. Hi, she said softly. Hi. How was work? I almost laughed. Productive. Fired a few people, acquired a shipping company, had lunch with your father. You had lunch with my dad? He came to my office to apologize. Well, to grovel, really. It was uncomfortable for everyone involved. She was quiet for a long moment. David, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Okay. Was any of it real? Our relationship, our marriage? Was any of it actually real? I sat down across from her, suddenly exhausted. That's what you want to know? Whether my feelings for you were real? Yes. Sabrina, I fell in love with you in a coffee shop. You were wearing jeans and a Northwestern sweatshirt, no makeup, your hair in a ponytail. You'd been crying because your car broke down and you were going to miss your sister's birthday dinner. I gave you my coffee and called you an Uber, and you insisted on paying me back by buying me lunch the next day. I remember. You ordered a grilled cheese sandwich and tomato soup. You told me about the book you were reading, about your job at the nonprofit, about how you wanted to travel to New Zealand someday. You didn't mention your family's money once. You didn't name drop or try to impress me. You were just you. But you knew who I was. No, I didn't. I knew your first name and that you worked for a literacy nonprofit. I didn't find out you were Richard Blackstone's daughter until our third date, when you finally told me about your family. And when you found out, I was terrified. Because I knew that once you learned what I was worth, everything would change. So I decided not to tell you. You decided to lie to me. I decided to let you love me for who I am instead of what I have. Apparently, that was a mistake. She started crying again. David, I'm so sorry. About last night, about my parents, about all of it. I was shocked and confused, and I didn't know how to react. You didn't defend me, Sabrina. When your parents were tearing me apart, you sat there and let it happen. I know, and I hate myself for it. But you have to understand, I've been raised my entire life to think that money matters, that social status matters. It's been drilled into me since I was a child. And what do you think now? I think, she wiped her eyes, I think I don't know who you are anymore. The man I married clips coupons and worries about paying rent. You're apparently someone who owns companies and has lunch meetings and makes millions of dollars while eating dinner. I'm the same person, Sabrina. I still clip coupons because I hate waste. I still worry about people who can't pay their rent. I just happen to have more money than I know what to do with. How much more? I told her. The number hung in the air between us like a bomb. Jesus, she whispered. It's just money, Sabrina. Just money? David, it's not just money. It's power, it's influence. It's the ability to change people's lives with a phone call. It's everything. No, I said firmly. It's not everything. Love is everything. Trust is everything. Respect is everything. Money is just a tool you used to lie to me for 2 years. A tool I chose not to use because I wanted you to love me without it. We sat in silence for a while, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on us. Finally, Sabrina spoke. What happens now? I don't know, I said honestly. What do you want to happen? I want to go back. I want to pretend last night never happened and go back to the way things were. We can't do that. The secret's out. Everyone knows now. Then what? Do we get divorced? Do you disappear? Do we try to make this work somehow? I looked at her, really looked at her. She was still beautiful, still the woman I'd fallen in love with in that coffee shop. But something had changed in her eyes. There was a calculating look there now, an awareness of what being married to me actually meant. I need time to think, I said finally. And so do you. How much time? I don't know. However long it takes to figure out if you love me or if you love what I can give you. David, I'm going to stay at a hotel for a while. Give us both some space to process this. Which hotel? I almost said the Marriott downtown, the modest business hotel where David, the IT consultant, would stay. Then I caught myself. The Ritz-Carlton, I said, the penthouse suite, because that's who I really was, and it was time to stop pretending otherwise.